Welcome to Pucked Up Hockey Moms, the landing space for moms of all ages, shapes, and sizes. And we won't hate it if the non-mom joins either. We just hope your ears are as unfiltered as our mouths, and you're as passionate about hockey as we are. It's time to get offside, ladies, and no whistles are being blown here. I'm your host, Amanda, and this week we have with us full-time single hockey dad and sports photographer, Jeff. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, I'm happy you're here. Let's kick it off, Jeff, and tell us how you became that dad with the camera. Was it a gradual thing, or did you show up day one with a lens longer than your arm?
Well, arm or something else, but it was one of those times in life where there was some changes or reorganization in the family structure, and I wasn't getting a lot of pictures of my son, except for maybe the team ones, yeah. And in no way am I knocking the photographers that come in and do the team pictures, because the patience that they have, I think, to deal with all of the various players and stuff is tremendous. But
yeah,
from just simply looking at them perspective, they're kind of boring.
Yeah.
And so instead of trying to buy more pictures, more of a boring picture to send to my parents who live in Alberta, I had a discussion with my lovely mother and said, hey, you know what? If you happen to buy a camera and leave it here, I could use it and take pictures of your grandson doing stuff and send that to you. And
super well-placed suggestion.
That was sort of the origination. And it's kind of just been a slow, mixed up tale of insanity, which kind of goes along with the rest of our lives.
I mean, hockey is a fast mixed up tale of insanity as it is. At what point did you realize that taking photography as a hobby has turned into an unpaid full-time job, would you say?
Well, the most recent thing I would definitely say is regularly getting a hard time from my partner for spending too much time working on those pictures instead of coming home from spending time taking my son to, hockey and his other sports, and then coming home and spending time with her. I come home and look at the pictures that I just took. So I want to see what happened. What did I catch?
Yeah, because you weren't actually watching the games.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah. Walk us through a game day for you. Are you lugging gear and like a mini media team, or do you just have like a small bag, small camera?
No, there's like a whole Hockey Night in Canada van that goes out in advance and sets everything up. No, I'm kidding. No, thankfully I don't travel with a huge amount of gear, although I have somewhat recently upsized my camera bag. So I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not. And then the other thing, I've also added a small plastic bag, and really sort of the only, I guess, pre-planning is making sure batteries are charged. I've not gone mirrorless with my camera. From what I've heard, not only do they take amazing pictures, but they do just suck the life out of batteries really quickly. So I'm pretty happy with what I have at this point. It works for me. People seem pleased with the output. Good. So the biggest thing in advance is just making sure the batteries are charged. That said, I did go on trusty Amazon and get a knockoff little device that fools the camera into thinking it's actually has a battery in it. But that then just requires that I have it plugged in, and likely then plugged into an extension cord and then plugged into some wall outlet. Hopefully that's somewhat kind of maybe nearby the surface of play. Yeah.
Finding an outlet is always hard. Yeah, that's fair. Do you actually ever watch the game, or are you just clicking away the whole time?
Well, I switched from video to stills. So probably I'd say I actually get to watch. Well, I'm always paying attention to the game, but it definitely is like sometimes on the rare occasion where the battery has died, I haven't been, frugal with the use of the batteries. And once I've gotten over my and use of 4-letter words, it is an interesting experience to actually sit there or stand and watch the game without looking at it through a lens.
Yeah.
But it's, I don't know. It's exciting to take the pictures as well. So it's, like I said, I kind of know what's going on, but then I get distracted by things that I think could be interesting. So like if there's a hit and then there's a bit of a discussion between the players.
Yeah.
After the hit, I'll often kind of get caught looking at that. And then my peripheral vision doesn't really pick up what's going on with the rest of the Like, where'd the puck go? Like, the game's,
But
the
sometimes
play's
really
still going, the
good
whistle's
things
still gone. And it's, so sometimes, like, if nothing then exciting actually happens, but I'm still kind of, looking at that through the lens, then, I might miss the actual exciting bit, which, whatever.
Yeah. Hopefully someone else is taking a video of that. An amateur, maybe?
You never know.
Yeah. How many photos do you think you've taken this season alone? And be honest, do you delete any of them?
Well, probably the easiest way to answer that is, other than I don't know, was there was a U15 house team that had me out to take pictures for one of their games, and it was about 16 to 1700 still shots.
Nice.
Over the course of a game, and that was only an hour and a half or hour 45 ice slot. So like a rep game is probably going to be more because they have the ice clean and there's like a longer time for the game to actually happen, right?
Yeah.
So I'd say that's for stills. If I'm just doing stills, it's going to probably be in that 1,500 to 2,000 pictures in a game range, which can be daunting at times, but sometimes it's pretty easy to go through because there's a lot of stuff that's not quite in focus, or the action is somehow not actually in the field of view of the camera at that point. So being able to parse that down has become with practice, it's become relatively straightforward, but it's not. It is a bit time consuming.
Yeah. I can see now why your partner's like, you're spending a lot of flipping time. It's like 2,000 a game, and how many games a week? And if you're doing other people's games too, then that's a lot. Yeah.
So, last year, I think my son asked me, he said, Dad, does the camera do video? And I was like, yeah. And then he said, well, could you video my shifts? And I was like, well, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then that's what sort of really got me into going back and forth between video and stills, is then I try and keep an eye for when he steps out on the ice and change it to video.
That's cool.
And then when he's done, I'll put it back on pictures. Unless the game's like kind of really exciting or something. If I get the sense there might be, again, a bit of a maybe commotion or something, and I already have it on video, I'll just leave it that way.
Yeah.
Because those will make for fun or interesting social media posts. But so now when I get home, and I try and spend time with my partner right away as opposed to, but when I get a chance, usually the first thing I do is actually go and take all the video, all of his ice time, and stitch it into one file, and I'll upload that to just like a private YouTube channel that he and I share, and then he can look at it if he wants. Yeah, it's not something that like I said, it was his idea to do it, and so I just take the video and upload it, or create it, put it together, upload it, and then
that's cool.
I can see how many times he's watched it, and I don't like enforce it, but it's more if I start seeing a bunch in a row that haven't been watched, then and this hasn't happened yet, but I kind of feel like if he's not watching them at all, like then I might sort of revisit the whole, hey, do you really need this, or do you really want this? So, yeah.
But if he's watching it, then it's still got a purpose. So,
well, and it, like I said, with it being his call originally to
do it,
to ask me to do that, then if he wants to, then that's cool. I think that's great. Video is used a lot these days for training and teaching purposes. So
great highlight reels too. I mean, a lot of places like it. So you've essentially already got your own like YouTube highlight reel for him. So you're like,
one or two times where he's sort of said, "Hey, look, can you send it to this game to Coach so-and-so, because they're considering me for whatever team." I usually send it with two provisos. First of all, I always go with, "Oh, I'm just a dad, I'm not a professional. I just play one on TV." And then I also say, "And this is not a highlight reel, this is actual game footage, so it includes things like fumbled pucks and weird bounces and tripping over the blue line, like
these are just his shifts."
Yeah,
for the whole
exactly.
game.
So what you see is what you get. If you want a highlight pack, I can do that. But if you want to actually see what somebody's like in real life,
this is actual footage. Yeah,
that's right.
That's awesome. So do you like crawl along the boards like NHL media pick guys or anything? Or are you sneaky in the stands or?
Well, so one of the things that I've really enjoyed about this is for me, usually, depending on the rink, every rink is going to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
Just sight lines and that type of thing. Usually I find the best places are not near where many of the other parents may be congregated. And so for some reason, having a camera in front of my face, even though it doesn't cover my mouth, it sort of in a way, I think maybe shuts off that part of my brain that operates my mouth.
That's
or
good.
At least turns the volume down a bit.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to like shout profanities or weird things when you're like concentrating, right? Like I always joke when my kids use scissors, their mouth opens like a scissor when they're using it. So I can imagine like when you're taking pictures, your mouth may or may not be doing the same thing, but it's not actually like talking usually, right? So
or if I am, like I said, I don't know, maybe the camera blocks it or
yeah, hopefully
like that. But no, I've there's been but where I found the best place is for the lens combination that I really like to use is I'm actually down at the far end, but usually what I'm doing is I've got my ass on a railing and I've got at least 1 foot up against the glass. I'm not leaning over it. I'm actually shooting a video and picture through the glass.
Yeah.
But it gives it good. I can get pretty much straight down that close side, so to speak, without getting too much distortion.
That's good.
And then I can almost get that entire rink from one corner. The only thing I wrestle a little bit with when I'm doing that is sometimes if the play is like right in front of me, I can't back up fast enough, and then without wiping out. So thankfully, that hasn't happened yet. But now that I've said
like
it,
a second camera.
Yeah, I got too many lenses and they take too long to change, so I kind of have my favorite and
yeah, you need like a second one positioned somewhere else that's just the video or something that you can like remote turn on or.
Well, so this is the plastic bag that's somewhat new, and it was an experiment, and I'll blame the ADHD on this one, but Amazon suggested I might want to look at sports cameras, and the brand that most people are familiar with is GoPro, but they're not cheap. But on Amazon you can get very similar devices with brand names that I've never heard of. And I was able to get 2 with mounts, and I think the all-in cost was about $100. And so I was able to put 1 in each corner. And again, it's kind of that, looking towards center ice from the corner. You can kind of get the goal, and you can get, some of the stuff happening. And those have turned out to be actually, for what I've paid, an interesting, like pretty good investment. It's kind of fish-eyed.
Yeah.
But there's been there was a young fellow who played on my son's team this year, and he scored an amazing goal. I think he even surprised himself. And
that's awesome.
I only had stills of it, which you can string them together and get a sense of what the movie was able to make and how amazing it was and how good it looked. But at the same time, it was neat that thankfully one of the little knockoff GoPros captured it, and I was able to send a copy of the actual video of it to him and put a big smile on his face.
That's awesome.
So therefore, then I had a big smile on my face.
Yeah. Watching the joy they get rewatching something like that's pretty cool. Yeah. Did you see like that Xbox Go thing? The AI thing, did you check that out?
I briefly saw it.
Yeah.
And I avoided it because I probably, if given the chance, I would have like just spent like the entire game inspecting it and playing with it.
It took me a while to figure it out. Definitely, I would do it from the corner so I wasn't in anyone's way, and I did pretty much a bunch of games on it for YouTube and whatnot. As long as you're at center ice and you have your phone in it, it will follow the players if you start when the puck drops. If you start when they're doing warm-up, it gets very confused. And it starts going everywhere. But it also has like a scoreboard. So you use another phone and you can add the scoreboard to it. So that's pretty cool. And I think you can somehow on it has a thing where you can do highlights and follow a player's jersey number if you can find. I haven't figured any of that out. But that's a cool option that you can like have to follow and you don't have to touch it while you're doing the stills. Just because, you need more gadgets, apparently.
Well, I totally do. Yeah, no, there's... And then there's how do I analyze? Like, can I actually, put players' numbers in and track it? And
I
like,
think
of
so.
course, there's all sorts of very expensive software that you can get that'll do that.
You're going to have to go look it up now, because I think this has that in the software, I believe. And it has multiple sports that you can put in the sport, and it tracks for that sport. So yeah, now it's like this shameless plug for the Xbox Go on this episode. But I do really enjoy it because my hands stay warmer when filming at the rink. And that is like by far the downside I found as just a regular old hockey mom trying to film on Facebook or YouTube, is my hands are always cold. So this removed it. And it was all for the convenience of my cold hands.
Love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people have called me extra before, and that might be why. Yes. Has everyone ever assumed you're a professional and ever considered just rolling with it and charging them like $200 for a digital download, like slipping them your number and be like, here you go?
Well, so I think I morphed myself into sort of a, let's call it professional.
Yeah.
In that, when I first kind of started to do it and I was okay with the results and was willing to share them, I would just put them into like a Google album or whatever, and then send that out via Team Snap or whatever, kind of group chat that the various, parents and grandparents and what have you might be in. And, I just thought it would be a nice thing to do. And, people could grab a copy of their kid doing something fun, or 3 or 4 of them goofing off, or running into the puck together or what have you. And unfortunately there was an issue where somebody borrowed a bunch of those that were taken over the course of a year and then used them to create something else, and I didn't realize that was going on, and
oh no,
didn't get my consent in advance. So yeah, it kind of left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth. So instead of complaining, which maybe I just did a little bit,
that's fair. I mean, it's your creative outlet.
Well, so I decided to act and created a website and then put a back end into it where I can upload the pictures that I want, and it puts them in nice little albums for me, and it'll put a watermark on it.
Yeah.
And if you want to download a copy, you can choose how much resolution you want, or if you want the watermark off, and if you're willing to pay, it's all yours.
Nope. And that's fair, right? Like, you've put a lot of time and effort into it. So I think that's fair that you should be compensated for it, because you're not sitting with your foot in your glass, on the glass, and your ass on a rail for no reason, right? Like, yeah, it's good. But I mean, it takes a lot of time and effort to do all that. So no, that's good.
That's it. Danger pay.
There's your hazard pay.
So hockey's very strict with who's allowed on the bench, usually.
Yeah.
And so I don't normally take photos from there, but my son also plays box lacrosse, and they're probably, according to the rules, just as strict, but for the most part, I've not had an issue with really anybody getting too upset with me being on the bench, as long as the bench is big enough. And even the coaches seem to not mind too much, because, again, with the camera in front of my face, I don't usually say too much.
Yeah.
And so I don't think I get in their way or anything. And there's been a few times where the lacrosse balls just missed me. So
you need a bubble.
Oh, yeah.
See, for the hockey thing, you just need to take your safety course now, or like a coach's thing, so then you can be on the ice and take the photos.
All new, and
I'm expanding my bubble to learn more of the things so I can share them. What's your go-to move? No, I feel like we kind of went over that. Let's talk about your son. How does your son feel about having so much of his hockey life documented?
So I had an idea, but I actually asked him the other day what he thought.
Yeah.
And his response was he didn't, I don't think he really thought about, how far back this went.
Yeah.
He's 15 now, and it was probably when he was about 8 or 9 that I really started to
document,
like more pictures than a perhaps typical person who was attending a game might.
Yeah.
His short term, like I said, so I think his response was more short term than anything, but his response is along the lines of, I really like that I get the videos, so I can see, how I did and, what worked, what didn't. He's like, that's really great. And then he kind of jokingly said, he's like, but, every now and again you'll post something online or, maybe I've done something a bit silly or whatever, and I get a few, teases from friends. He's like, so, I don't know about that, but at the same time. So then I was like, oh, wow, okay, I didn't know that. Did you want me to like stop? He's like, no. He's like, if it bothered me that much, I'd tell you to stop. He's like, occasionally I do get teased a little bit for a few of the things, but he did point out it's not always him who, because I don't do it to make fun of anybody. To me, it's if it puts a smile on my face in like a non-negative sense, there's been instances where I've had video of like a kid who gets seriously hurt. Yeah. And for me, that's just a no-go. I'm not putting that up for people. Yeah. Like if it's a good hard body check and the person is at full yard sale or something, but then gets back up and joins the play after they picked up all their gear, then sure, that's cool and
like a normal hockey play and everything's cool, no one's hurt. But nobody wants like to actually put the train wreck on there where someone's hurt, right?
For me it just doesn't sit well. I'm sure and that's the thing though, I'm sure it would get, and it's kind of a sad reflection in a way of social media. I'm sure it would get a huge amount of views and likes and forwards and all the things that drive algorithms, but
that's not what you're looking for.
I don't know, I just don't like nobody puts their kid into these sports to, to hurt them, right? So, but we all recognize that it is technically a risk. Even just going to public skating, you put razor blades on your feet and try and float around on a frozen sheet of water. Like
walking down the road can get you hurt too, right? So, unfortunately, but you just have to tell him the things I tell my children, which may or may not be good parenting rules. I mean, and I don't say it to actually be mean or belittle, but I try and find tell my kids, but they're like, well, do you have to post that? I'm like, well, if you're embarrassed by it, yes, I definitely have to post it. But no, I won't. I will ask, like, hey, is this okay if I post it? And I'm like, but really, if they're making fun of you because your mom's on a podcast for hockey, you should just say you wish your mom was doing something cool like that, because it is pretty awesome that they're out there doing something fun and that they love, and they're willing to be confident enough to not really care what people think about them. So it's just trying to teach them an alternative way to respond to people who are making fun of something that just because they think it'll bug them, but at the end of the day, they don't probably actually think it's something worth making fun of. It's just kids will look for a weakness. So if they have a strong comeback, they're likely gonna be okay.
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting watching the physical growth and maturation process. And he's very active and likes to go to the gym, and that's where he is now.
Because he's 15 and he loves hockey. So
it's been interesting that, a few years ago there was a, small handful of kids who'd give him a bit of a hard time at school or whatever, and then all of a sudden it stopped, and it seemed to coincide with the spring, and he kind of was starting to wear like tank tops and stuff, and he's not the kind of kid who's going to go and like push back necessarily, like physically or verbally. He'll just go and hang out with other people and just walk away and like roll his eyes and be like, yeah, whatever. Which is great that I don't know where he got that from me. Because back in high school, I probably would have been like, oh yeah, and it would have just ended poorly for everybody. But
them's our fight.
He just sort of turned the other cheek and just wandered off. But it's got to the point where all of a sudden nobody really picked on him too much anymore. So I think it's nice. It's just his friends who maybe I've maybe posted one or two of them doing something a bit funny or silly or whatever, and so they're just kind of getting even. It's like, oh, well, finally one of you.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing, right? You're like, well, none of this is meant to actually be mean, right? Like, it's all in good fun and stuff. But I'm sure if they had said, hey, like, this is super offensive, I guarantee you'd be like, oh, I'm very sorry, and take it down or something, right? But yeah, I'm sure it's not that bad. They're just kids finding a way to pick on each other for something.
Oh,
yeah. Does he ever say, Dad, enough with the camera? Then or no?
The other day he did, and I was taking pictures and video of him because he was dressed all sharp because he was going to an assessment, and I think he was a bit nervous, and he was just not down with having his picture taken at that point. So I did get a bit of an eye roll, and I just would you just stop? Then I kind of thought about it for a second and was like, yeah, okay, maybe that's a bit much. But no, since he asked me to start doing the videos of his shifts, he seems quite pleased to see
That's
me
good.
there doing the stuff, and because he gets something out of it. And
Perfect.
yeah.
How do you handle balancing your actual job, family life, and your photographer identity?
Yeah, that is the question. How does one do that? Yeah, I'll get super focused and going through things, and 4 or 5 hours will just kind of disappear,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll be like, wait, what about my regular daily responsibilities and stuff like that? And um, yeah, it's just, I don't know, kind of just trial and error and roll with it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll get you know a player who's done something neat in the previous game will message me because they happen to follow me on one of the platforms or something, and they'll sort of politely inquire as to whether or not I maybe got their goal on video or something. And they're like, I don't know, I haven't had a chance to look. I know it's been a week, but other things come up. But then I'll go through like 3 games in a day, and I'll just be heads down.
Yeah. Like any other person on a screen who disappears for a couple hours. Except for yours has a bit more purpose other than like block blast or something.
It depends who you ask, but yeah.
I'm sure, when kids are smiling for it, it's a little more purposeful, I feel like.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
If it makes somebody laugh or put a smile on their face, then
yeah. What's the most ridiculous thing you've done to get the perfect shot?
So I did do some work for a local junior team.
Yeah.
And I went during the warm up. I'm usually the type of person who rolls with the whole, easier to beg forgiveness than ask permission. So I just wandered on into the bench. Nobody really said anything. There weren't really a lot of coaches or whatever around. I think there was one of the trainers or something, and that's about it. And then I was like, so then I opened one of the doors and kind of crouched down, and so I don't know, it's a neat angle for sort of being able to actually look up at the players.
Yeah.
And then it was like, wow, attack with the door. I'm just going to stand on the ice. There's like 2 teams and there's pucks whizzing around everywhere. I got a few in the foot or whatever. But, thankfully I had kind of winter boots on. So it was, I don't think anybody was actually shooting them at me. It was just they, whizzed through the, around the boards or something and, happened to come up and give me a little bump. But for the most part, it was interesting. I think the players thought it was pretty neat to actually see, cool. Like, oh my goodness, this guy's right out on the ice.
You're gonna have to get some steel toes and then put those carbon fiber like shot blockers on it. Like turn your boots into little like skates. That's funny. What's the best rink food you've had since you've been at all the rinks? I'm sure.
Yeah, I roll with my my apple and my protein bar.
Not rink food. Your own food.
I guess it's like my like a player will maybe have their standard pregame meal. I've got my mid-game snack.
That's perfect.
Yeah, no hot dogs or popcorn. Don't get me wrong, very delicious and foods I love to eat, but I don't know, it just became one of those things. Just grab a protein bar and an apple on the way out the door with my now 2 bags of goodies, and
you're gonna have to get like one of those rolly bags or something.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Hopefully, maybe not. We'll see.
But what's the coldest rink in this province that you've been to, or anywhere really?
Definitely, I'd say West Hills Arena.
On the island, yeah.
It's remarkable how it's such a new facility, but it's very, very cold inside.
It's pretty chilly.
Sounds like we can have some general agreement on that at this point. At least between the 2 of us anyways.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's tons more that are at least as cold, if not colder, but maybe I've just not had the pleasure yet. Yeah. That one definitely stands out in my mind.
Is there a player that you drop your camera for just to watch, other than your own kid?
We're so, I don't know if I want to say lucky, but there is so much technology in hockey these days, even at like sort of junior hockey level. My brother used to work for a junior A team somewhat locally, and they would have multiple camera angles, and that film would get sent off to wherever, and they'd get full analytics packages back, and each player could look at all, like, every second they were on the ice and exactly what they were doing. And so I kind of look at it now and watch all the any hockey I want to watch, you can almost watch it from pretty much any angle. So, and if it's in 4K, like, that's a bit or 8K or I don't know, whatever we're all rolling with these days. I don't know, but I don't know. It's sort of one of those things where maybe it would be more interesting to talk to some of the the parents of these players. The Connor McDavid's or just, Cale Makar's parents, maybe, like, what is it like for you to be able to, like, see so much of your son and, maybe compare that to, say, like, Wayne Gretzky's dad and be, when you were, younger and when Wayne first entered the NHL, like, what was that like, if you weren't able to actually attend a game and
Yeah.
sort of, the differences between that with the change in technology.
The technology coverage. You like pre-answered my favorite question right there, but through technology, so I like it. Any advice to other dads or moms who are thinking about picking up a camera at the rink?
Go for it.
Yeah.
It's as hard as you want to make it, and also therefore it's as easy as you want to make it.
Yeah.
There's the cameras in people's phones these days are pretty spectacular. You don't necessarily need to go out and get something that's purpose built $5,000 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But even if you just wanted to say drop $1,000 and get kind of mid range, you can leave it on auto and just push the button to take the picture, and you're gonna get, as long as you don't just take 2 pictures per period or something. Don't be shy. There's no film, right? So you can just blast away. Make sure you get a big memory card, and then as long as you're okay with the fact that it's gonna be 2 or 5% or whatever that are gonna be actually kind of interesting or cool.
You might surprise yourself.
Really, that's it. It's sometimes it's volume and being lucky. I'm not gonna lie. There's a few other things you can do, but I think if somebody just wants to start out, it could get really overwhelming and complicated quickly. So start with easy.
Yeah, it's good advice. Looking ahead, do you think you'll keep doing this through his whole hockey career, whatever that looks like?
I'd like to. I think it kind of keeps us close.
Yeah.
Not that we're not close anyways, but I guess we'll see what happens over the next few years and where he's playing and what they have. Maybe they have 8 different video cameras in different locations and stuff. He can get all his shifts. He doesn't need me to do it.
Yeah.
Or he's playing, away as your son is, doesn't play locally.
Yeah, I have to watch him on TV.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
It's awful.
It's too bad he's not at home. I get it, but at the same time, to be able to get to watch him on TV, that was pretty neat, though.
Yeah, they have a couple different apps you can use between Flow Sports and Live Barn and stuff. So, I mean, if the filming is bad or an awkward spot, or you're listening to a 17-year-old boy talk through the whole thing, it just depends on what the availability is, or there's no sound, which I've filmed all games with no sound for very obvious reasons, because I am not silent when I'm near a camera.
There's a lot of times where I've shared video and it's been silent, and every now and again
it does suck. It does suck to watch a silent game, and as I'm watching some of his silent games when he's been at certain rinks, I'm like, oh, this is awful to watch. The sound really does make the game, but I'm like, but I just can't control my mouth during a game. And I can't be held responsible for my inside voice becoming my outside voice, and I don't want to offend someone because I could be 4
another
plays.
Fucking drop pass. What the hell?
And sometimes the words that are coming out of my mouth are from 4 plays back, and it has nothing to do with what I'm saying or what happened right now, but it's that person next to me's kid or something, or the one that's, and it gets super offensive, and I would never be able to leave the house again. Yeah, I keep it to the podcast and not the live streaming of children's hockey.
Actually, I don't know. I was going to say I forgot to look through the rules of the local minor hockey association to see if I was actually allowed to drop an F-bomb and related to.
I don't know.
I think between you and I and whoever else,
this one's rated explicitly, so it's fine. There's been a couple where I didn't have to tick that box because I didn't drop any F-bombs on them. That felt weird. I was like, hey, we didn't swear in this episode. That was really nice of me.
Well, that fucking sucked.
It was fucking awful.
Well, have me on anytime. I'm good comic relief, and I'm happy to drop some F-bombs for you.
And I'm happy that I taught you what IDGAF meant. That now you can carry that with you.
I'm thinking about getting that made up onto a hat. So
Yeah.
I'll let you know if I get.
Let's switch gears here. And what's the weirdest or funniest thing you've ever captured on camera that wasn't part of the game?
I don't know. Nothing comes to mind. I'm just blanking on.
No? Like you haven't caught like a mom like through glass doing something really random and you're like, what is going on over there? Or like a hockey fight in the stands.
Well, at lacrosse a few weeks back, there were some parents that were being really, really verbally aggressive and extremely negative towards the ref. So I just kind of flipped it to video and recorded that. It didn't go anywhere, but I was like, oh, that's a bit excessive. Like, you might disagree with a call here and there, and
yeah.
But to get that worked up, and unfortunately, hockey's in a situation where it's challenging to have and keep refs because of that.
Yes,
and unfortunately,
absolutely.
lacrosse has even more of a challenge with that. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like, hey, come on, like if we want to keep having games, you kind of have to be a little bit
Rein it in a little.
Yeah.
I think we're all getting used to our I don't give a fuck attitudes and being able to say what we want. That I think we sometimes forget that we still need to rein it in. There's a time and a place for things, and screaming at children is not one of them.
No, after COVID, I actually put the stripes back on. I unretired. I talked to my parents, and we figured out it was exactly 30 years between
rounds of reffing
being an official. And I'll never forget, there was one time in the middle of a game at a stoppage, I had to skate over to one of the coaches and point out that he was coaching 8 and 9-year-olds, and the two lines people that were doing the game with me were like both 12 and 13 or 13 and 14, and that perhaps his language could be adapted to be a bit more appropriate given the age group and also
did that go over well?
Well, I think we kind of agreed that maybe he could tone it down a touch. I'm not sure he was super happy with that idea, but I think he kind of understood that there might be consequences afterwards if that didn't happen. So
that's a lot different than being behind the lens. It's being like right in there.
Oh yeah.
Before we wrap up, what's next for you? New lens? I know you have Instagram and YouTube, so we'll throw both of them in the show notes for you. But In Action Sports is where they can find you, right? What else is going on?
Yeah, no, just I think getting, for my son, getting to an age where, with the body checking and, not quite full on fights or whatever, there is a bit more interesting stuff happening from an action perspective. But at the same time, there's part of me that sort of misses like the sort of the cute little kid aspect of it. Definitely something that I'd be more than excited to do would be to work with a team at the say the U9 or the U11 level or whatever, where you can actually like I'll get a nice picture of my kid out on the ice and I'm able to catch the look on his face, but it's usually he's pretty serious and pretty focused and dialed right in, whereas I have some from 4 or 5 years ago and he's just got this big huge monstrous grin on his face.
Yeah, that pure look of joy.
That's pretty fun to be able to have that kind of thing.
Yeah, you almost need to go to like the WHL games or whatever, and when the little Timbits go out and just take the photos for those, because those kids have the best time on on the big rink. That'd be so much fun to capture, I think.
Day ever, for sure. But I gotta keep myself reined in when it comes to gear though, because it's surprisingly easy to try and justify things in my own mind. But
I'll lend you my Xbox Go so you can play with it without investing in it.
I like that. And if anybody else has anything that they want me to
see, you just need to start. Like you can go do a bunch of promo videos and and tag Xbox Go, and then hopefully other people, and you can try out all their things. That's where you have to go with it.
There we go.
Yeah. Brand awareness or something like that. I don't know the terms.
Well, that's it. My Nikon that I've had forever and love dearly, because it's probably the best camera I think I've ever used, is Nikon. Name
drops. Well, Jeff, thanks for coming on the show this week, and thanks for keeping it real and capturing all the chaos. It definitely gives us parents proof our kids crushed it.
It's definitely a pleasure, and thank you very much for having me on.
Well, thank you for saying yes. I mean, I randomly just shoot people messages and hope that they don't ignore me, and You didn't, so that was a win. Until next week, friends, stay loud, stay proud, and stay awesome. Thanks for tuning in today, and we appreciate you listening. Catch us next week for another mix of hockey tales, tricks, and/or tips.